Well, hello, everybody. I'm here with Ryan Shimabukuro, good buddy of mine from back when I was wakeboarding quite a bit. And I thought that this was a proper time to introduce him to the Ascend podcast, just because he has an incredibly inspirational story. Even though we learned about each other through wakeboarding, Ryan is also a very pronounced ice skater, a speed skater, in fact. And he has, in the last couple decades, helped to coach a number of different Olympic teams, most prominently the United States, and with a lot of amazing skaters. You've probably seen him on the ice in various Winter Olympics. But the incredible thing about Ryan is that he's from Hawaii, born and raised in Hawaii, and you wonder how in the heck does a Hawaiian get on the ice? And I mean, it is so cool. I want to let Ryan tell you about that, Pat. So Ryan, go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of give us a little take on your path to ice skating craziness.
Thanks for having me on the show, Mo. It's an honor. And first of all, I want to set the record straight. You being you like hadn't gone to school in Hawaii, you know I can't call myself Hawaiian, even though I'm from Hawaii. I'm local, but I have no Hawaiian blood in me, so I don't want to get my butt kicked when I go home.
True.
Yeah.
Good point.
All right, now, but my introduction into speed skating obviously is a little bit different. I was 6 years old, and my father was watching the 1980 Winter Olympics on TV from Lake Placid, or that was happening in Lake Placid, New York. And he was watching one of Eric Heiden's races. And it wasn't like I sat down and watched all his races, but I thought it was a really cool, event. He was speeding around in a gold suit and skating. Must have been one of his speed events or sprint events because it was super fast. And so I was hooked. But at the time, Hawaii didn't have any access to ice. It wasn't until a couple of years later where the Ice Palace opened up in Halava near right across the street from the Aloha Stadium. And it wasn't even a couple of years until after that where I got on the ice for the first time. A family friend was having a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, and afterwards we decided to go skating. And I think I was like in the 7th grade, and fell in love with it right away. Skated for about 2.5 hours that night and only fell once. And shortly after that, just started skating with friends on the weekends, and shortly after that, enrolled in the speed skating class at the Ice Palace, which was 1 hour a week. And then we had to supplement our ice time by skating out in public sessions on the weekend on a Friday or Saturday night. And I was saving up my money to go to the ISI Nationals, which I thought at the time were the national championships, but they're just it's a development organization, a development competition. And one of our figure skating coaches at the time, who ran the club and so forth, said that they had gotten a call from the secretary of the Amateur Skating Union that they were having a summer camp in Marquette, Michigan, that was being put on by Diane Holum, who was an Olympic gold medal winning skater herself, and she was Eric Heiden's coach during the 76 and 80 Winter Olympics for the U.S. team. And she wanted to know if anyone from Hawaii, if there's any skaters from Hawaii that were interested in coming. So we went to this meeting with my parents for this ISIA Nationals, and my coach brought it up like, hey, would you be interested in going to this camp? And right away I shot it down like, no, I've been saving my money to go to this competition. I want to win the national title and this and that. But on the way home from the meeting, my dad kind of convinced me, like, we had a long talk. He's like, this training camp sounds like it's a better use of your money. You're going to learn a lot more, and you're probably going to benefit in the long run a lot more than going to this one competition. Right. So, maybe think about it. And after a day or two, it started to make a lot of sense, and I was 13 years old at the time. And so finally said, okay, you make a lot of sense, I'll go. And went up to the camp in the summer of 1987, and I was way in over my head. What I thought was going to be a development camp ended up, there was, we're 6 months away from the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary. There were some of the skaters that were there that were on the Olympic team, other national champions, and all the way down to, 10-year-olds, or maybe even younger than that at the time.
Right.
And I had never done dryland training before. I hadn't even speed skated in actual speed skates at the time. And so they had arranged for me to fly from Hawaii to Los Angeles, where they had me meet up with Jerry Search. And Jerry was a coach out of the Demora Ice Speed Skating Club in Los Angeles. So he picked me up at the airport, and I stayed at his house for a couple of days, where he let me borrow a pair of used speed skates that so he had for somebody else, and taught me how to sharpen skates. Went through some video with me, and also took me to one of the club sessions, and I got on speed skates for the first time. And it was, to put it bluntly, it was a yard sale. I mean, in the first half hour, I was squeaking around, making all these kinds of noise that I'd never heard before, because most people don't realize that speed skates the blades itself are different from a hockey skate and a figure skate. And I've only been in hockey skates and figure skates. But by the end of the session, I was able to skate around and keep up somewhat. And then the next day we flew up together from LA to Marquette, Michigan. And it was a week-long camp filled up with dryland training, ice training, classroom lectures, all kinds of stuff. And by the second day, I couldn't even walk. I was in so much pain. And Jerry filmed everything on a VHS camera. And by the end of the week, it was about 7 or 8 VHS tapes. And I bought them all. I bought copies of them all. And for over the next year, he helped me write a training program and stayed in touch with me. We didn't have email back then. We didn't even have mobile phones. So I had to stay in touch with him over snail mail and regular phone calls. And the next year when I went up to the same camp, they saw I had made a lot of progress on my own, and ended up, I was invited to the national team program for short track in Marquette, Michigan. But I always wanted to skate long track. So in the summer of 1989, my family, I'm the youngest of 4 children. My sisters and my brother had all graduated from high school, and they were out of the house. So my parents gave up their jobs in Hawaii and moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin with me, because I was going to only be a junior in high school, and they felt like it was important to keep a family union around me, even though I could have found a skating family to live with and dorm with and so forth. But they moved up with me. And fast forward a couple of years later, I make my first national team in 1991, the junior national team. And then in 1994, 95, I make my first senior national team. Now, I first competed in my first Olympic trials in 1992, but that was just for experience. I was too young. I wasn't good yet. I was using it as a tune-up for the Junior World Championship team qualifier. In 1994, I'm getting better, around maybe top 15 in the nation. And then going into 1998, I have a chance of making the 98 Olympic team. And so, like I said, back then the trials were 2 weeks, over 2 weekends. And then the first weekend, I finished 6th in the first 1,000 meter. And again, it's the best of two efforts. So the best time for the top 4 guys make the Olympic team. So I'm on the edge of making the team.
Man.
But so I have one more opportunity. But in the week in between, I come down with pneumonia.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And I had battled bronchitis and pneumonia issues all my athletic career. I was born with collapsed lungs, and suffered a lot of health issues when I was young. So it was something that I battled through my skating career, and I knew how long it took me to recover from those kinds of illnesses. So when I got the phone call from my doctor, I was like, I laid in bed and I said, well, my skating career is over, because I'm going to have to withdraw from the competition. And, I can't ask my family and my friends to go another 4 years of supporting me.
Right.
So, I had planned to move back home to Hawaii, enroll in school, and, just live a normal life. But within the next couple of weeks, a couple of skaters asked if I would coach them part-time until I went home in the spring. So I said, yeah, okay, sounds like fun. And within a month, I had 11 full-time skaters, and I was having a blast. And it turned into something where, like, well, maybe I can do this full-time. So I asked them and their parents, and they're like, yeah, if you want to stay, we'll stay with you, for the whole next season, if that's the case.
Man.
So decided to change my plans and had my own private group. And then the spring of 1998, USB Skating started to approach me saying that there was going to be some staffing changes like it always does after an Olympic quad. And my coach was being promoted to the national sprint team position, and they needed to replace his position. So they were interested in me taking on that role. So in July of 1998, I signed my first contract with US Speed Skating and was the Midwest Development Regional Coach from 1998 until 2002. And then a year later, from 99 to 2002, took on the additional roles as the junior national team coach as well. Then after the 202 games in Salt Lake City, I was promoted to national sprint team coach, and a position I had held for 3 Olympic quads from 202. So I was a head coach for 2006, 2010, and 2014. And then after the 2014 Olympics, I moved to Japan. I took a job with the Japanese Skating Federation as their national sprint team coach, and to help build a centralized national team program, which they never had before. But unfortunately, some things didn't work out. After, what's supposed to be a minimum of 4-year contract, I resigned after 1 year and moved back to Utah. Thought I would never coach again. I needed a break. So the year of 2015-16, half that year I took off. Then I started doing private lessons, and then toward the second half of the year, had a small group of individual athletes. I would help out with some of the national team skaters from the U.S. team that maybe didn't qualify to go overseas and so forth. So while the team was gone, I would take care of them along with some of my private skaters and so forth. Then in 2017 and going into the Olympic season in 2018, I became the Colombian national team coach, and Colombia is the strongest inline country in the world. And inline speed skating on wheels is not in the Summer Olympics. So if any inliner wants to go to the Olympics, they have to transition to the ice. So I was in charge. I was contracted with them as their national team coach, but I was also the ISU transition program coach, which the ISU is the International Skating Union, which is our international federation for speed skating, figure skating and short track speed skating. So they had partnered with the Utah Olympic Oval and US Speed Skating. So I was I was hired to do 2 jobs. So even though I was the Colombian team coach, I had skaters from Chinese Taipei, from Argentina, and the US. So I had about 19 skaters from 4 different countries. And then so going into Korea in 2018, I had 5 skaters qualify for their first Olympic Games from 3 different countries, 2 from Colombia, 2 from Chinese Taipei, and 1 from the US. And then
awesome.
And then after the 2018 Olympic season, I was rehired by US Speed Skating as the national sprint coach, and that's my current position now. So that takes us to now. So sorry for the long explanation, but
that's great.
Just starting my 23rd year of coaching, and I guess now it's about what would it be 30 something years in the sport.
Yeah.
So
that's quite a long time. I mean, you like 87, I think is what you said. So at least 33 years, man.
Yeah, I had started speed skating in 85, but I hadn't actually got on actual speed skates until 87. So yeah, so about 35 years now.
Dang, man, I didn't know that. You don't even look like you could be close to being someone that old, man.
It's the Japanese genes, right? You know what that's about.
I'm telling you.
Keep us looking young. Yeah.
Well, you talked about all those. I didn't realize that you were coaching that many people in that many different countries. And it's kind of funny because one of my buddies is a talent agent in the NFL and other sports like that. And he says it's funny because he was at a Super Bowl, and the one team was winning big, and so he's getting the players' wives calling from one place, and then just yoo-hoo, and then the other team started catching up, and then the other teams and so on. So I'm just wondering, what was it like when you saw many of your skaters compete against each other? What do you do in that situation?
Oh, I mean, at the end of the day, like at least in speed skating, or long track speed skating, which I coach, there's two disciplines, right? And I coach long track and then there's short track.
Right.
And at the end of the day, they got to go out there and compete, and the clock doesn't lie.
Right.
It's not like in short track where you're competing head to head. In long track, it's a time trial event. So, you
Yeah.
know, the one thing I always prided myself on is that it might be an individual sport, but it's conducted as a team. And whether or not your teammate is from the same country or a different country, you're working together to make each other better and achieve a common goal. And so
Right.
at the end of the day, when they go to the starting line, it's on them at that point. My job is done, and they have to go out and execute the race. So, and it was really great to see that, even if they were from different countries, they were able to still, through good and bad, they were able to support each other and be happy and sharing each other's successes and also support each other in failures. And
Yep.
so, yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster. I'm not going to lie. It's tough. But at the end of the day, the skaters have to do their job and they got to perform. It's nothing personal.
No,
You know,
no, you're
that's
right. You're
that's
right.
life, and they learn a lot about life through the sport they do.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in this too because I mean you went through all kinds of stuff. I mean, a kid from Hawaii going over to Michigan, then and getting transitioned to ice and so on and so forth. But there were a lot of trials, I'm sure, that went along with that. And I'm
Oh
just
yeah,
wondering, well, especially when you determined that you wouldn't go the next 4 years and putting those folks through that long grind again.
yeah,
But I'm just wondering, how did that transition to you being a coach? I'm sure that there are many skaters that were going through similar types of trials in different formats, of course. But how did you help them through those tough times, and then to really stay focused and to really feel a sense of belonging? Because that's a incredible amount of commitment that those athletes are going through, right?
yeah,
And you've coached some pretty big names. I mean, Shawnee Davis and a number of other folks like that, the multiple Olympics, the whole bit. So love
yeah.
to hear about that.
The journey it is a struggle. A lot of times, the media likes to they like to pick their darling favorites, right? And they
Sure.
always make it seem like it's a steady road to the top, but I guarantee you it's not. Even for some of our most prolific athletes.
Right.
For me, it was a lot of struggles, a lot more struggles than triumphs. And there's a lot of times where I doubted, why am I doing this? And one of my best friends in Hawaii, I remember one year I was really struggling, and I was coming off of like two bad seasons in a row. Anyone can have a bad season.
Right.
Uh, but when you have it over and over again, that becomes really, really tough. And you start to question why you do things, why you're wasting, you know, why are you going to bed early? Why are you getting up early? And
Yep.
you pay to skate. It's not like you're getting paid to do it. You're paying money to skate. You're working part-time jobs to make ends meet, even though you might have some fundraising help and help from your family and friends. But it's tough, and you're living, hand to mouth.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home during the spring of 1996, and uh, I was mentally having a hard time whether or not I wanted to call it quits at that point. And I was having I want to say dessert at Anna Miller's in Pearl City with one of my
Yeah.
best friends,
Yeah.
and I told her, I said, sometimes I feel like a loser because I see you all getting your degrees, you're ready to start your professional lives
Yeah.
and build a successful career and start families and stuff like that. And here I am, in my early 20s, and I haven't even come close to starting that route, and I'm busting my butt, and there's no guarantee that I'm even going to qualify for an Olympic team, let alone,
Right.
have a chance to compete for an Olympic medal. um, she made it really. She changed my mindset really quick. She's like,
Right.
Ryan, like, she's like, it's the opposite. She's like, anyone can go to school, get their degree, get a job, and have a family. What you guys do on a daily basis is courageous because you're doing something without a guarantee. There's not too many people in this world that will do that. That they're gonna
Right.
put in all that hard work. They're gonna spend all their financial resources for no guarantee. That takes something special. And she really, really like changed my mindset. And
Level set, man.
yeah, it put my mind at ease because I had this complex in my head. I have my family, I have friends, I have donors, people that I've never met submitting donations through my fundraising organization that I've never met. And, I felt this pressure from, that, like I don't want to let anyone down. And
Exactly.
so, so it was still there, but it helped me navigate the next season, and I started to have some progress again. Uh, but then in the fall of 1997, going in, just a couple of months before the 1998 Olympic trials, I
Right.
was really in a rut, and physically, I wasn't recovering well from workouts.
Right.
I was skating really bad. Like my times were really bad, and I was depressed. I think I was clinically depressed at that point, but I didn't know it.
Right.
And I got some really, really hard advice from Bonnie Blair Cruikshank, who's
Oh, yeah.
five-time Olympic champion.
Yeah.
And I was really, really frustrated because I had a great summer of training. I was probably in the best shape of my life. I wasn't sick for the first time. I wasn't sick,
Right.
but the results weren't meeting up with uh, everything that I was doing. And so one day after a workout, I'm in the locker room changing,
Right.
and she could see I was down, and she
Right.
wasn't skating anymore. Her husband was still skating, so she was around the rink a lot. And
Right.
so she's like, "What's wrong?" And I started explaining to her, I'm like, I'm just confused. I'm frustrated. I don't know why I'm skating so bad. I'm just tired all the time. And I had a great summer of training, and I don't know what's wrong. She's like,
Right.
"Ryan, you've done so much training at this point. Probably your body just needs rest." She's like, I've known you for so many years, and you're somebody that just doesn't know when to rest, So she's like, "Why don't you just take the next couple of weeks off completely, and get away, let your mind relax, let your body relax. It's only going to do yourself good. Doing more of the same right now is not going to help." And
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
said, "Well, I don't know if Dave, my coach at the time, Dave, I'm sure if Dave will let me take 2 weeks off." She's like, "I'll talk to him if I need to, you know." So I went to him and I said, I told him what, Bonnie suggested. He's like, "Well, I don't know if we should take a full 2 weeks off. Maybe we just play it day by day." I said, "Okay." So the next day I show up for training. She sees me there. She's like, "Ryan, get the heck out of here. Like, I'm going to go talk to Dave right now." And so I left. I checked out, and I stayed away for a couple of weeks. I came back, and I had a talk with my coach first. I said, "Look, I did some soul searching, and I need to probably not lead any training right now. I
Right.
need the team to help me get out of this physical and mental rut. And I'd like to address it to the team."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay, so first thing before we even start our training tomorrow, I'll let you talk to the group." And I said, like, I just basically told him, I said, "I need your help right now. As soon as I'm able to help lead again, I will. But for now, and I don't know how long it's going to be, I need you guys' help by just letting me follow in training so I can
Yep.
work my fitness level back up without having to take on the brunt of that extra percentage of breaking the wind and so
Exactly.
forth." So
Yeah.
after a couple of weeks, I started to feel better
Right.
physically, but also obviously mentally, I was still kind of doubting. Then one
Sure.
day I came home and I got a letter, again, this is before email.
Right.
So, and I got a letter from one of my family, a friend of our family that was good friends with my mom. And she
Right.
was a part of my fundraising organization. And I actually just came across the letter during spring cleaning through this whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
I was going, I was spending some time going through some boxes, and I came across the letter she sent me. And she said, "Hey, your mom's been telling me like you've been struggling, you've been going through some hard times, and I wanted to let you know, like, my dentist has been following your story for like the last 10, 15 years. And he always asks about you, and this and that. And he said that he thought for sure you'd be a sprinter because of your Asian heritage and so forth. But he also said that, and because he was also on he was a part-time little league baseball coach and so forth. And he said, because of your Asian, your Japanese heritage, your background, you're gonna have this fear of failure, that you're not gonna want to disappoint anybody. You're gonna feel this extra pressure to succeed and not disappoint anybody. And there's more that went on through it with the letter, but I laid in bed that night. It was about, I got home and I read that letter about 3 times, and I kept repeating those 3 words in my head: fear of failure. Like, that's not really the first time I'd actually ever heard that phrase. And I'm like trying to ask myself, what do I gotta be afraid about? Like, what do I gotta fear? But then it dawned on me that I really wasn't skating for myself, all these years. I was skating to make sure that I didn't disappoint my parents. I didn't disappoint my family. I didn't let all my friends and my supporters down. And so I finally made a decision that night. I said, forever how long? It might be the next couple of weeks of my career, or it might be another 4 years. I don't know. But for whatever it is, I'm going to finally skate for myself. So I came to my coach the next day. I said, for the next 3 weeks in the practice time trials, I'm not going to race 100%. I'm going to race about 70%, 80%, then 90%, so I can build back my feeling on the ice in my races. So by the time Olympic trials comes along, I'll be ready to go. And he agreed. And he's like, okay, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Let's go with it. And every week was getting better. My times were getting faster. I just felt this this load off my shoulders. Now, granted, I still had a long ways to go.
Right.
Our top guys were still, there was a gap, but I was closing the gap. And I was closing the gap, not racing 100%.
Yep. It's interesting what you're saying over there, though, too, is a lot of the folks that I've had the opportunity to interview and to speak with, especially the high performers, there was that transition when they were doing it for someone else, whether that to impress them or for the glory of it or whatever it might be. And that, it seems like everyone had that transition where I got to do it for me, man.
Yeah.
And once that happened, it's amazing to see the impact that it had on not only their performance, but even holistically across the board. It did better for the relationships. It did better for everything in it. So it's interesting that you should say that.
Actually, the hardest part of that process was telling my mom that I didn't want her coming to the Olympic trials.
I can only imagine, man.
Because they had already, about 5 years earlier or 4 years earlier, they had already moved back to Hawaii. My grandparents were ailing, so they moved back to take care of my grandparents and so forth. But my mom had planned to fly up to watch the Olympic trials and to give me support.
Right.
But the last thing I wanted was to have to entertain my mom in front of, or in between a competition, right? I just wanted to be fully focused on what I was doing and skate for me. So at first she wasn't too happy about it. She's like, what do you mean you want me there? I said, well, Mom, if I have any chance of making this Olympic team, I got to be 100% focused.
Exactly.
And I don't want to have to worry about entertaining you in between my races and worried about what you're doing from day to day,
Right.
And she's like, well, what if you make the Olympic team? You don't expect me and Dad not to come and watch? I said, no, I'd want you guys there, but I'm not going to see you before my race.
Exactly.
You guys are going to be like away from me.
Right.
Here, you're going to have full exposure to me. You're going to be staying with me. Totally different scenario.
Right.
So, long story short, she was like, okay, I get it, and so in the end, she didn't come. And like I said, going into the first weekend, I started off with a PB in the 500. And then that night, later that night, I skated a PB in the 1,000, and I was on the border of making the team. And the next night I skated my second 500 and skated in another PB. So I was just on a roll.
Wow.
And confidence was building and everything was coming. So I had 5 days in between before the next set of the last weekend of the Olympic trials. And that's when I got pneumonia. It was on that Monday night.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I went to taekwondo class. I went to a taekwondo class. J.K. Lee Taekwondo in Brookfield, Wisconsin. They were big supporters of the U.S. team at that time.
Right.
And so I went there for a class just to like break a light sweat, like an active recovery, loosen up.
Exactly.
And I was feeling good. I was feeling limber. Came home in the middle of the night. I ended up getting pneumonia. Or
Oh,
there's either a really bad case of bronchitis or a lighter case of pneumonia. But
right.
either way, like the doctor called me on Tuesday afternoon, and he's like, "Yeah, you got something bronchial." And
Oh,
so I hung up, and that's when I looked at, I'm laying in bed. I look up at the ceiling, and I made the decision like this was it. My skating career is done. And
right.
my mom was the first person I called,
Right.
and she starts crying, and she's just telling me to pray on it, don't give up yet. And I said, Mom, you know my history with this illness.
You're right.
Like,
Right.
there's
Right.
no way I can skate with this thing. I
Right.
can't even breathe right now. And
Exactly.
so I
Exactly.
hang up, and I call my coach, and I tell him. He's like, well, I'm not gonna pull you from the competition yet. Let's give it
Yep.
a couple of days, just rest. I've seen people turn things around, and I'm like, Dave, you've known me long enough, but fine, we can make the decision later, but I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
So again, long story short, ended up having a scratch from the competition, and that was it. And that's, again, a few weeks later, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, is when I started coaching part-time, and a month later than that was
Yeah.
coaching full-time. But now, going through experiences like that,
Yeah.
I try to help athletes keep perspective when they're struggling.
Exactly.
Because I remember what it was like. When you're an athlete, you lose perspective. You just think your world's crumbling, and it's hard to see the good in a bad situation.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so I was very fortunate to have a lot of good support around me, a lot of people that I could rely upon to help lift me up,
Right.
both emotionally and physically. And I had great teammates that understood, because when I told them, like, I have to follow, all of them, not one of them balked at it. They all said,
Yeah.
Brian, you've helped us so much. It's our turn to return the favor.
That's awesome, man.
You know,
That's awesome.
and so
They buoyed you, man.
yeah,
Buoyed you big time.
exactly. And so, you know, I again, even though speed skating is an individual sport, it's conducted as a team, and the stronger the team unit is, and sometimes you have to give up a little bit of yourself for the betterment of your teammate or the entire team. Hey,
Yep.
man, because everyone goes through it. A lot of people like to be selfish and just look at them. What do I need? What's best
Exactly.
for me? Even if they're winning or whatever. But at some point, you're gonna hit a slump, and
Yep.
you're gonna want and rely upon that support of your teammates and those around you. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, so
You're that's so it's amazing to hear your story like this, because I'm just thinking of all the slumps that I've seen friends go through. I mean, from a very low level athletic accomplishment type of thing on my side, but that ability to just focus on building yourself, but also listening to others, man, it's a humbling experience, but man, it really does make you learn quite a bit. And now, years later, the advice that you are able to share with your athletes, I know it's been incredibly impactful
well,
across the board.
I do my best not to forget what it was like to be an athlete,
Right,
and the struggles that they go through. A lot of
right,
times, and a lot of the skaters nowadays, they may not know my journey, right?
right.
Because I remember one time this one kid was complaining that he had to move from one state over, you
Yeah.
know, and one of the former skaters who, we were teammates back in the day, they're like, who does this kid think he is? Like, he doesn't even know you moved 7,000 miles away, from your home to skate, you know,
Right,
from a from an area that didn't, have winter sports.
right.
He thinks he's got it bad, you
Yeah,
know. He can
yeah,
just drive across state line and he's home, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, it's just a matter of keeping perspective. And, I try to be empathetic, not
Yep.
sympathetic. I mean, I try to be empathetic with the athletes and so forth. But
Yeah.
sometimes it calls for tough love as well. And like, hey, man,
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to suck it up. This is
Yeah.
a hard, hard sport, and life is hard,
Yep. Yep. And you bring up an important point though, is we're not bending backward to give them a way out that is the easy way out, right? We have,
Right.
and what you do on a regular basis, and heck, I've even seen you in the wakeboarding situations when when you're teaching me how to do different jumps and tricks and so on and so forth. It was about, dude, pull your head out, man. It's all right.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's an empathetic support, and with that toughness. But that toughness, what separates it from just being angry, is that you can feel the caring, and it's because you've been there in that situation before. And that's what I've always appreciated about some of the things that I've learned from a wakeboarding perspective. Only, even though it's only been through the phone and on the boat on a singular event, it's been a fantastic ride. And
Well,
that,
thanks,
so I
man.
can only imagine what your athletes get. So it's really neat to hear how that journey has helped you become that kind of coach.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm coming into the twilight of my coaching career.
Right?
It's hard to admit that, but
Sure.
after suffering a heart attack last September, and the stresses and the demands of this job,
Yeah.
one of my former mentors, I wouldn't say former, he's still a mentor. I still listen to him a lot. He was my former boss, and about 10 years ago, he was like, how long do you think you can continue to coach? And
Right.
I'm like, I don't know. And at the time, I still felt fresh. I didn't feel burnt out. And he's like, it's gonna sneak up on you, but you're gonna have to start to plan for the day where you realize that it's not really a choice.
Right.
It's more like a decision, because you're gonna realize you can't do the job at the level anymore that it requires, and because you're not gonna have the temperament to do it anymore. And finally, I'm starting to see what he means. And
Yep.
after my heart attack, like, I had to start to make some changes in the way I coach.
Yep.
I try not to get worked up as much.
Sure.
I coached, a certain way for 22 years, and
Yeah.
for better or for worse, I am where I am now. And I'm fortunate enough and very blessed that I was able to get a second chance to make those changes. But it still doesn't feel right to me. I still feel like I coach in a different way that isn't true to myself. And when I have to be tough, I don't have the capacity to drop the hammer like I
Sure.
used to. And to be honest, my doctor said I'm not allowed to. I got to
Yeah.
take my blood pressure multiple times a day just to make sure that, I'm staying healthy. Um, uh, but, I might, like I said, I might be in the last, couple of seasons through the 2022 games. And after that, it might be done.
Right.
That's not to say that I'll be done in the sport. Maybe there's another capacity or another function I can serve in, but at least coaching at this level, that might be it for me. And because, it's all encompassing.
Sure.
And it's not like when I clock out from a workout, my mind shuts off. I'm constantly thinking of the next day, reflecting on what we went through today. How do we
Right.
apply it tomorrow, next week, the next training block, the next year, and so forth. So it's hard for me to shut it down. That's why with wakeboarding, it's such a good outlet for me, because even when I coach on the boat, it's a different energy.
Sure.
It's so intense in speed skating.
Yep.
I mean, it's a lot of people don't understand that it's a different kind of energy. In a lot of ways, it's not fun at times,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
uh, you're fully exposed,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
you're competing in the world's greatest sporting event in the world, the Olympic Games. It's the longest historical global sporting event in the world.
Right.
Whereas in wakeboarding, I admire what the current professionals do, and I admire the heck out of the forefathers in the sport from the
Yep.
late 80s to the early to mid 90s and so forth, and what they do. But for me, it's my outlet from skating. Growing up in
Yep.
Hawaii, I was a fish. I love being in the water, whether it was in the ocean or in, our condo pool or whatever. I
Yeah.
love being in the water. And obviously, boogie boarding, body surfing, whatever, growing up in Hawaii, you don't have that on the mainland, at
Yep.
least unless you live on a coast. But,
Sure.
I was fortunate. My brother introduced me to the sport back in 1994 during a trip home after the skiing season, and I just loved it right away. So when I'm on the boat wakeboarding, my goal is number one. Even though it may seem like I'm intense, but that's just my personality.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I just want to have fun, and I
I,
want to make sure everybody else on the boat has a good time
oh
and
yeah.
have a great experience behind the boat. And just try to get people stoked on the sport and so forth. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
a different
You
it's a
do
different
though.
kind of energy.
You absolutely do, man. Every time I talk to you about either ice skating or even the wakeboarding, especially, you can tell the passion is there and the level of enthusiasm. It ignites everybody.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You
Oh
know,
man, yeah, this is cool because I got to see a side of you that I'd never had seen. I mean, going from all the tough times into this, and just it's interesting to see that journey, and then understanding where it might come to end, but also feeling good with it. It's
yeah.
pretty neat to see that, and I appreciate you sharing that, man.
Oh, you're welcome. And we all have an expiration date, right? I
Yeah,
mean, whether as an athlete or in our profession, we don't know when it is, but
yeah,
it comes a time where we have to make peace with ourselves and what we've done and where we're gonna go from here on out. I remember the day laying in that bed and making the decision that my skating career is over. And I gotta tell you, Mo, um, a lot of people, the one thing I tell people when they're in the same predicament, at least for me,
right,
there was no like take a week to think about it. It
exactly,
was it was instantaneous. The
right,
minute I hung up the phone with my doctor, I made the decision. I'm done,
exactly, exactly.
you
Yep, yep,
know?
yep.
And so when athletes struggle and they're going through a rut or a downtime in whatever sports they're, it might not even be a sport. It could be whatever endeavor they're pursuing. But
Right,
I always ask them this. I said, is there any doubt in your head that, should you go on or should you stop? And if
right.
there's any doubt, you're not ready to be done yet.
Yep, yep,
If you're ready to be done, there should be no question about it,
yep. Yeah,
you know? And so,
absolutely.
and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're gonna have to live with that decision. And that's why for me, I was able to make my peace with it pretty darn quickly because my decision making process was instantaneous. It,
Exactly.
Now, for some other people, they may have a different process. And
Right.
I'm not going to say my process is the cookie cutter for everybody, but it sure made it easy to decide how I was going to move forward.
And
I was,
dude, that's so important though, man. I'm just looking at some of the fighters I've seen in mixed martial arts, or even some of the folks that I've seen in the NFL or other high level sports, and there's always that sense of regret. But the ones that don't have that same regret, they always had something that they were planning for afterward.
yeah,
And it was really neat to see because when they left with the comfort of knowing that they left it all on the table.
right.
And it was, and it's hard for me to say because I've competed in various sports, but obviously not at the level that you've competed at. And it's just that plan and
Yeah,
understanding that the finality of, of an athletic event isn't the end of life, right?
right,
There's that natural next chapter, and so I'm
right.
I'm very excited to see what that chapter is for you, man. Because I'll be calling you. We'll be hitting
Yeah.
some of the Hawaiian food and all that other good stuff,
Oh, for
and
sure.
jamming with that, right?
Yeah. And I just want to add, like, when I decided to quit, like, I thought that was it for me in skating, you
Right,
know? Now, coaching provided me a second chance at my Olympic dream, you
right.
know?
Yep,
And skating's been my childhood passion, and I've been very, very fortunate and blessed that I've been able to make a career and a living out of my childhood passion,
Right.
and be able to provide for my wife and my family and so forth. Coaching is, I can honestly say, is one of the, if not the greatest job in the world, because I get to affect people's lives and hopefully make them achieve things that they never thought they could be,
Yeah.
and so forth. But it does come at a cost. Now, the thing is this though, would I have a different perspective right now had I not gone into coaching? You
Right.
know, that's
Right.
something I always wonder, because like I said, coaching gave me, the suck. And I don't call myself an Olympian because I'm not. I never went to the Olympics as an athlete, even though people are like, well, you've been head coach at the Olympics 4 times. I'm like, yes, but that doesn't make me an Olympian. You
Right.
know, there's a distinction there. And I always try to make sure that I correct people. But would I have a different perspective had I not been able to live my Olympic dream
Yeah.
through coaching? I don't know. I honestly can't say how it would have affected me. I just know that I try to make sure that any of the athletes that I coach or come in contact with that may be going through the same struggles keep a perspective and they look at all the angles,
Yeah.
because who knows where your future lies, you
Yeah.
know and
Absolutely, man.
yeah,
Absolutely. I,
yeah,
I actually have a feeling you're going to figure all that out real quick, man.
yeah, because now I'm getting into a point where I'm gonna have to make another life decision, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm coming into the third quarter of my life game.
Yeah.
you know?
Just as long as it's not the midlife crisis, right?
Right, right. And fortunately, I have a wife and family that's very, very supportive of me,
Right.
and they're very proud of what I do.
Right.
My wife's a fan of the Olympics, and that's how we met, actually. And so, and that's really important because coaching is tough as it is, but spending so much time on the road, and a lot of times where the team and the skaters come first, and
Yeah.
the family comes second, that can be really, really hard.
Really tough. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really tough, but I'm very fortunate that my wife Hide, was very, very understanding, and again proud of what I do, and
Yeah.
proud of the skaters and the team. And you know my kids went through some tough times, but now that they're older, I think
Right.
they see the value in hard work, and the
Oh,
moral
there's no doubt about that,
we
man.
gave
There's
them.
no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
when you're
won't.
young, you don't realize, like, everything's just about you. But now that they've grown older, and my son just graduated from UVU, and
Holy
he's about
crap,
ready to,
man.
he just moved into his own apartment, and he's getting ready to start his first full-time job. Very proud of him that he's able to stand on his own 2 feet and provide for himself. That's all Hide and I wanted, for our kids, is that they grow up to be very productive people in society, and they're good people. And
Yeah.
that's what I want for my athletes as well, because it doesn't matter how many Olympic medals or world titles that you earn. uh,
Right.
if you're a jerk, it doesn't make me feel good inside.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Sure thing.
I would hope that my skaters walk away from the sport at some point, and they're a better person than when they became. They leave a better person than they came into it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Otherwise, a part of me will feel like I failed. You
Sure.
know,
Well,
so
knowing what I know about you and what I've seen about the athletes you've coached is so far, and just in my very biased opinion, that you're succeeding. So
oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
you got it. Well, we have got to do this again, man. Definitely.
Anytime,
Heck
any,
yeah.
anytime.
Maybe next time it'll be a wakeboard related one where we get a couple of the friends out there and get them on the show, right?
Oh, that'd be great, man. If we could set it up to do it on the boat, that would be even better.
I'm all over that, man. Let's
Yeah.
call them.
All right. Yeah.
Well, again, Ryan, thanks for the time, man. Much appreciated, and looking forward to when we could do this again.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it, Mo.
You got it, man. Thanks a ton, dude.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All
Appreciate
right.
it being on.
See ya.